Minister, I think, again, arguments aside, I don't think anybody could doubt there's a very significant gap between the HAP threshold limits and the actual rents that are being charged out there. The highest homeless HAP rate in my area is 1950, and that's the homeless HAP rate. The normal rate, the highest rate, is 1,755. The average rents in my area are now 2,586.
36.
I propose to take PQs 83 and 94 together. The Housing Assistance Payment HAP is a form of social housing support available for people who have long-term housing need. Any household assessed as eligible for social housing is immediately eligible for HAP. Eligible households can source their own accommodation, private rental sector, which should be within the HAP rent limits provided to them by the local authority. Maximum rent limits for the HAP scheme are set out in each housing authority area by the Housing Assistance Payment Amendment Regulations of 2017. And under Housing for All, my department was tasked with undertaking an analytical exercise to examine whether an increase in the level of discretion available to local authorities under HAP is required. The Housing Agency carried out the analytical exercise on behalf of my department to better understand what level of discretion should be made available to local authorities under HAP to maintain adequate level of support. And since the 11th of July 2022, the HAP discretion rate has increased from 20% to 35% above the prescribed maximum rent limit for new tenancies. The couples rate has been extended to single person households. It is, of course, a matter for the local authority to determine the application of the discretion is warranted on a case-by-case basis, and also to decide the level of additional discretion applied in each case. A separate review of the discretion available to homeless HAP tenancies in Dublin, which is up to 50% above the prescribed maximum rent limits, is currently being undertaken by my department in conjunction with the Housing Agency. Our department continues to keep the operation of HAP scheme under review and closely monitors the level of discretion used by local authorities, taking into account other sources of data, including the Residential Tenancies Board rent data published on a quarterly basis. Minister O'Brien is committed to decreasing our reliance on HAP schemes, and central to that is significantly scaling up our supply of social housing. Housing for All is the government's plan to increase supply of new homes on an average of 33,000 per year over the next decade, and this includes the delivery of 90,000 social homes, 36,000 affordable purchase homes and 18,000 cost rental homes. As new build supply of social and affordable housing ramps up, there will be reduced reliance on the HAP scheme.
Minister, we shouldn't have to rely on HAP. It's €1 billion a year into the pockets of landlords, but until we have the level of public and affordable housing necessary, sadly, we are going to end up relying on it. It is not the case that reliance on it in my area is going to decline when you look at the housing targets. The delivery plan for my area is 2,318 houses by 2026. There are currently 4,000 households on the list, and the council say another 2,825 will join before 2026. In other words, we will have more people on the housing list in Dún Laoghaire at the end of Housing for All than we have currently, even with the new delivery in Housing for All. In that context, the HAP limits have to be somewhere approximating the rents that are out there. Because at the moment, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack, trying to find a place that is affordable in terms of the HAP limits.
The discretion levels, again, just acknowledging the contributions of both deputies in relation to their both respective areas. And if you include the Dublin Regional Homes Executive Area, the households in receipt of the discretion comes in at around 62%, and the average rate of discretion is at 25.5%. Excluding the Dublin Regional Homes Executive Area, the average households in receipt of the discretion is 56%, with an average rate of discretion of 19.1%. So the increases have been, in terms of the discretion, have been effective, and I think that's important to note that. And noting too that some HAP recipients are making payments directly to their landlords beyond the amount of HAP being paid on their behalf. So there isn't a legislative precision precluding HAP supported households from making that contribution towards monthly requirement by the landlord, and local authorities do have a responsibility to ensure that tenancies are sustainable, that households in HAP are in a position to meet the rental costs involved. But both deputies are absolutely correct in saying that our government is committed to reducing our reliance on HAP overall, and the way to do that is through the delivery of the Housing for All, the social affordable cost rental, and the schemes that are in place. And it's welcome to note the points that Deputy Violet Ann Wynne has made in relation to the delivery of social housing in Clare. And I think that's, over time, that's how we will reduce the reliance. But I think the discretionary rates are there, and I think local authorities and tenants and landlords are availing of them. Thank you.
Dr. Richard Boyd Barrett.
Look, I want rent controls. You're not going to do that, right? I think you should, but you've set your face against it. We need public and affordable housing to replace HAP. But in the meantime, there's a problem. In Dún Laoghaire today, there are 3 one-beds available. 1,895, 1,507, 1,900. One-beds. Then you got onto the 2 beds, you're over 2,000, 2,500, 3,000. The one-bed maximum homeless HAP rate is 1,350. Well below the highest one bed, and that is a similar picture all the way. So if somebody is told you have to go out and find a HAP tenancy, it is an exercise in despair and futility, because they don't exist. They don't exist, right? So something has to be done to bridge the gap. If you're not going to do rent controls, you have to raise the HAP levels to the levels that the rents are actually being pitched at.
Deputies Major and Dún Laoghaire, the constituency, Deputy Boyd Barrett, is one of the highest local authorities in use of the discretion of HAP across all local authorities. We're still approving 608 HAP tenancies per month. We have committed to reducing reliance on HAP, as we stated, and that is around delivery of supply of social, affordable and cost rental. We also, I think, given the points made earlier by my colleague, Minister O'Brien, we're buying out 1,800 HAP tenancies in terms of the use of the tenant in situ scheme. So there's making considerable progress in terms of right across the country in all local authorities, in Clare and in Dún Laoghaire, in terms of trying to reduce our reliance on HAP. The discretion is there. I think local authorities also have discretion in relation to local market conditions to exceed the maximum HAP rent limit by up to 35% or 50% in the Dublin region for households at immediate risk of homelessness. So I think local authorities should be proactive in terms of the use of this discretion. And I think it's critically important as well that we continue the supply to reduce our reliance on HAP.
Thank you, Minister.